In today's video, we're going to be repairing this damaged threshold. This threshold is in such bad condition that the owners had to remove the wooden piece just so they could get the door open and closed. Thankfully, they still had the piece so I can reinstall it here so you can see how bad it was. Now let's get to replacing this old threshold. First, you want to use some type of blade, a pocket knife, and cut away any of the old caulking around the sides and the front and the back of the old threshold. Now go ahead and get your reciprocating saw and cut the old threshold in half down the middle. This is going to allow you to have two pieces that you can pry up separately and pretty much make it easy to remove the old threshold. But as you can see, I didn't have to do any of that because this threshold was in such bad condition it just shook itself apart and pretty much removed itself. Now let's survey the damage and see if we have any other work to do besides just replacing the threshold. Thankfully this door frame's in pretty good condition. As you can see, just a little bit of wood rot that's going to be pretty easy to repair. Now I like to have a clean workspace, so I'm constantly vacuuming in between each step. So here I am just kind of wiping down and cleaning up everything underneath the old threshold. Now because of the way door frames are manufactured, you're going to have old nails and screws horizontally coming out of the bottom of the door frame that went into your old threshold. You're going to need to pry or cut these out before you put in your new threshold. Thankfully, this door frame was in such condition I could actually just pull them all out with my fingers. Well, at least the left side was that way. The right side I had to get some tools and actually put in a little bit of work. Now we're back to vacuuming, scraping, and wiping down and prepping for the new threshold. For our replacement threshold, we're going to be using one made by a company called Frost King. They come in a variety of finishes and materials, but this one's made out of oak and aluminum. The next step is going to be trimming your new threshold to fit in the doorway. As you can see, the new threshold on the bottom is a little bit wider than the size of the old threshold. Because there are adjustment screws on the new threshold, you're going to actually need to cut off a little bit on each end of the new threshold. That way that the adjustment screws are centered up in the center of the door frame. This can be a little frustrating at first, but really with a little bit of simple math and some measuring, it's really easy to figure out. Now in my opinion, the simplest way to do that is to just put the old threshold in the center of the new threshold, mark it on each side, and then cut off each end. One of the most important tips I can give you is to measure and mark, remeasure, remeasure again, and then measure again. You really only get one chance when you cut this thing to fit. When you finally measured enough and it's time to cut, you're going to use either a reciprocating saw with a metal and wood blade or some type of hacksaw. I wouldn't recommend using a chop saw like I am here unless you've got extensive experience using tools like this and you're using the proper blade. Now it's time to test fit your new threshold. You're going to want to use a rubber mallet to tap the new threshold underneath the door frame. This is a really important step because you want to make sure that you get everything properly aligned before you put any sort of adhesive or hardware to secure the new threshold. You'll know you've aligned it properly when the bottom of your door is flush with the top piece of the threshold. If you're going to use screws like I am to mount your threshold, you need to remove this top wooden adjustment piece first. It's also okay to just use construction adhesive or another type of sealant, but I like to use screws whenever possible. I feel like it gives a little bit stronger of an installation. But overall, using construction adhesive is just fine. When you are using screws or hardware, I like to do at least 3 straight through the threshold into whatever the base is underneath. This particular one is concrete. I use tapcon screws to mount this threshold to the concrete, and it requires pre-drilling the threshold and the concrete. Usually you can just pre-drill directly through the threshold and then into the concrete. This concrete was probably the hardest concrete I've ever had to drill through. I don't know if my bits were dull or what. I ended up having to drill quite a few extra holes because I couldn't go the full depth, and then I ended up breaking several of the screws. So I probably did 8 or 9 holes, but by the end of it, I had 3 good strong screws holding the threshold down. If you decide to forego the hardware and just want to use construction adhesive, just put down 3 or 4 good beads horizontally in between your door frame. Then you're just going to press down your new threshold into the adhesive that you put down and clean up any mess that you've made. Now as you can see, I'm reinstalling that wooden piece. That's actually an adjustment piece that allows the threshold to adjust up and down to make sure you're getting proper contact on the bottom of your door. That way you don't get any air or water coming in underneath your door. When you tighten the screws, it lowers the adjustment bar, and when you loosen the screws, it raises the adjustment bar. You're going to want to adjust it where you don't see any light coming through underneath the door, as well as a little bit of tension when you open and close it. I didn't record the whole process of repairing this water damage, but it's pretty simple. If you have a small area that needs repaired, all you really need to do is cut out the small amount of water damage that you have and fill the area with something like Bondo. You can create the shape of the door frame using cardboard and tape like I have in this video. Once your chosen material has set up, it's time to sand smooth and paint. Unfortunately, the customer didn't have the matched paint, so all we could really do was sand. This will get painted later. Sanding by hand is totally fine, but if you have the option of using some sort of power sander, I highly recommend it. This thing really put in some work, and it only took me a few minutes to sand everything smooth. Now it's time to grab your favorite exterior caulking and seal up around your newly installed threshold. Lay down a bead of caulk on all 4 sides of your new threshold and smooth it out with your finger. Now it's time to step back and admire your hard work. Overall, this project should take you about 1 to 2 hours to complete, with about $40 to $60 of materials. Hopefully this video helped you a little bit and turned an intimidating project like door repair into something simple that you're confident that you can complete yourself. If you do have any questions about this project, please let me know down in the comments, and if you have any other home repairs you need help with, please let me know and I'll try to cover it in a future video.